But you need to explore. You have quite a few months to explore adulthood. And you see, and they see the perception of adulthood with your culture, community, or family. So that adulthood, we don't have a general, universal agreement on what constitutes adulthood or maturity. We don't. Different backgrounds, different cultures have their own definition. Interesting topic also, to spend time thinking, ruminating, turn it over in your mind for a few months. I think something good will come up. If you turn a certain topic around in your mind, talk to people, whether directly or casually, indirectly, or maybe explore in the internet, see, are there different definitions of maturity? Do you have that? Interesting topic too. The problem for us is that we tend to take everything so seriously as something, something that I have to do for a certain future. But the best approach is to regard it something as related to you, to life in general. Something, that's interesting to spend time thinking about. Maybe spend time reading a few poems about this definition. So adulthood is the key word. Very good, those people who have come up with these topics are very good. Let's move on. Thank you. And of course, all of us have cell phones. So whenever there's something interesting that occurs in your mind related to that topic, write it down on your cell phone. There's a notebook in your cell phone. Put it down. And it might become something that would expand into a very good essay. Or different notes might coalesce or combine sometime in the future into something meaningful to you. That might be a possibility you want to consider. And let's be more practical or pragmatic. Clarity, coherence, unity. That's the three criteria for judging whether a piece of writing is good. The basic criteria, actually. As I have always said, all the grammar rules, all the the rhetoric or requirements relating to language serve only one purpose: clarity, to make it clear. So there's no ambiguity, or there's less possibility that someone may be accidentally or maliciously trying to distort your message. Let's move on. And that's the topic, again, connections. We have been talking about connections all the time. Connections. Clarity of expression depends on logical connections among sentence elements. Let me give you some examples. Let's move on. It's the rewording of the same thing. Let's move on. Like these three things, the most common errors, I remember a professor in my college years, actually it's not my college years, it's my master, when I was working on my master degree. A professor when he spots one of these three mistakes, he would, throw back your paper. Just, you need to go over your essay again and correct that error before you turn it in. One is comma splice, the other is run-on sentence, and the third one is fragment. Why? Because these sentences or these types of sentences create confusion. So the first thing in our quality control of our college application essays is to eliminate these kind of mistakes. Let me show you some examples from SAT packets. Let's move on. Comma splice. This is a comma splice because you have a comma connecting two independent clauses, is it? It also is confusing because the second clause, they may refer to English poets or painters or shepherds. That's a familiar example. That's why. Because if you come up with such a sentence, you make yourself vulnerable to different kinds of interpretations. You are not sending a clear message to your audience or your readers. That's why this is a very serious error in language and in logic. Let's move on. These two sentences are correct because you have who. Who must stand for shepherds. There's no confusion. In the second sentence, you have shepherds doing A and doing B. Again, no confusion. Good sentences. For some of the students, this is redundant, but for some of the parents, maybe that's something that could be easily avoided in our writing. This is something that should not occur. Let's move on. Comma splice in the first sentence. Second sentence, good. You see, the first sentence, you have two independent clauses separated by a comma. Again, we should not allow this to occur, to happen in our writing. No. The very basic syntax rule. Let's move on. The first sentence is a comma splice. Second sentence is good. One very conspicuous mark of good English writing is what? The ability to come up with subordination. The main idea should be expressed in the main clause. The second idea should be expressed in participle phrases, infinitive phrases, gerund phrases, other phrases. And the second sentence, critics often equate the popular appeal of a work of art with inferiority, comma, and then forgetting it must modify critics. Forgetting that Shakespeare wrote his extraordinary plays primarily to please his audience. So this is a good sentence. It's clear forgetting refers to critics. The first sentence is wrong because which one is the main idea? Or are they both important? Are they both the main idea? If you want to make the first sentence correct, of course, you can say but. Then they will become contradictory ideas. Or if you want to attribute this sentence to a causal relationship, you can say because. Because they forgot, then you have the result and the reason. Use conjunctions. Let's move on. Run-on sentences is easier to understand. You don't have a comma, you don't have a conjunction, you have nothing. Two sentences run into one another. Run-on sentence. Let's move on. Let's go quickly since we should be familiar with this. And this is a run-on sentence because it has two verbs. One is imagined. And then you have filled, you have enjoyed. We don't know what is what. It's a typical run-on sentence, isn't it? Because the verb enjoyed, the subject should be shepherds, but the shepherd at the same time serves as object of the preposition with. Nowhere. It's going nowhere. Well, let's move on. I want to go to a more fragment. Yeah. This sentence does not have a verb. It's let me have 10 more minutes. Is that all right?
Yeah, it's fine. 50.
Thank you.
50.
Okay. Yeah. Let's move on. The first sentence is a fragment. It does not have a verb. Huh? The second sentence also is a fragment. It does not have a verb. We don't have a verb in the sentence. That's basically a problem. Let's move on. Let's move on. That's a repetition. By doing something is why. That's a terrible sentence error. By doing something, again, is a prepositional phrase. It cannot serve as a subject. How can you say by doing something is why? So delete that by. Just say incorporating. It's awkward anyway. The second sentence is good. By doing something, this artist, Helen Hardin, has had an impact on contemporary Native American art. This is good. Second sentence is good. First sentence is wrong. By what? And we can go quickly over this because we are very familiar. Use conjunctions. Use subordination. Use coordination. You need the connections. Actually, it reminded me of one basic fact we need to know. If you are a good English writer, you should be able to use conjunctions. You should be able to use prepositions very skillfully. It's not that how many words or how many nouns or verbs you know. It's how you manipulate the relationship among words. Many conjunctions, especially prepositions. That indicates, and also, of course, the phrases. Participle phrases, both present participle, past participle, infinitive phrases, gerunds. Let's move on. And this is something very basic. Use coordinating conjunction to connect ideas you think are equally important. And we have a lot of those. We have not only, but also. Both, or you can even use at once. Is it at once handsome and intelligent? We do that. And also use a subordinate conjunction to connect a main idea and what you consider to be a secondary idea. And let's move on quickly. Not only to, but also to. Remember, not only but also serves to connect not only just two verbs or two nouns, but also phrases, even infinitives. These are some examples. Make sure you can, when you revise your essay, keep in mind you have all these tools or devices available. Let's move on. Okay, thank you. Let's move. Let's go on. Those conjunctive adverbs. Pay attention to these adverbs because they are adverbs. They are not conjunctions. So if you do not use a semicolon before them, you are creating a comma splice. Let me show you, I actually already talked about this with my students. Look at the position of however. You can say, of course, he is a student, semicolon. However, she is a teacher. That's fine. However connects two sentences. But you need a semicolon because however is an adverb. But look at how flexible is the position of however. He, however, is a teacher. You can put it in the middle. Or however, he's a teacher at the beginning. Or he's a teacher, however. Not a conjunction. We call it a conjunctive adverb. Is that? It could be placed anywhere. And these are just some examples of those conjunctive adverbs you can use. When you learn an adjective or a verb, you need to know it's not enough. You need to, at the same time, remember what prepositions it is working with. Let's move on. For many of us, it's based on instinct. But for some of us, you need to try to remember. This is idiom. And in the SAT or ACT writing sections, there are many problems related to this. Wrong preposition for wrong adjectives. Let's move on. That's intransitive verb, means it is not followed directly by an object. So we need to consider together with a preposition that naturally follows a verb or an adjective. Let's move on. Another thing, when you are revising your essay, modifier. Let's go to the example. Dangling modifier, we talked about it all the time. When visiting a rainforest, the preservation cannot be visiting a rainforest. So make sure you have the tourist. Important principle in English writing. Let's move on. So when you are looking at the, your essay sample, you need to have a list next to you. So follow the list and you revise your essay or add it. We call it editing. According. Although numbered among the most technically demanding pieces, Chopin cannot be a technical piece. It's a composer. So the second sentence is right, is it? Frédéric Chopin's compositions are pieces, not the composer. Be very careful with modifiers you use. This is almost a summary of the writing section. Everything we studied in SAT, what is the ultimate purpose? Applying those rules to our own writing. That's actually the purpose, in the minds of those people who design college, SAT. By painting them this afternoon, the words cannot be painting themselves. So the answer should be, were they to be painted this afternoon, the words would be completely dry. The second sentence is correct. Is it, again, a modifier problem? Let's move on. And that's about the position of a modifier. Doesn't matter. Let's move on. These are, let's move on. those examples can be skipped. Let's move on. And again, pay close attention to pronouns. They need to have a specific antecedent. Otherwise, we would have a reference problem. Let's move on. The first sentence, the third line, they has no reference. We don't know what they refers to because the subject is the broad-banded copperhead is singular, especially if you look at the verb vibrates, singular. And it is know that should be it, it referring to the subject. And that's the same thing. It occurs in the first sentence is wrong because we are talking about lightning strikes, so they occur at the rate of the strikes occur. It's not it, because frequency cannot occur. Let's move on. No, let's stay with this page. The agency, singular. So just, this is probably one of the most likely items, we may miss something. Pronouns, modifiers. Make sure that those errors do not occur in your essay. SAT again, ACT again. And the new SAT actually has moved very close to ACT because you have to find out the errors of connection in the context. There will be no single sentence for you. There will be all in passages. So this is very, very similar to the process of our revising or editing the essay. Very close. It's more practical, very practical actually. Let's move on again. Its history is wrong. It's no reference. African great parrots, plural. But this is something we sometimes, some mistakes we make. The second, the third line, that is a mistake, because lives